How to become chosen by God, blessed by God, and God's favorite. It's going to be very difficult for you to materialize your desired reality if you feel like the universe or God is against you. So it's very important that you actually have the capability of becoming chosen by God, blessed by God, and God's favorite for you to feel like things are actually progressing in a manner that takes you towards your desired reality. Because spirituality without the ability to control your reality is vanity. So in this video, I'm going to be giving you the esoteric versus the exoteric definition of God. I'm also going to be giving you why not everybody worships the same God, believe it or not. Some people worship a poor God, some people worship an abundant God, some people worship a stingy God. And what else I'll be giving you in this video is how to not only mold God, but improve your relationship with God, and then how to truly embody the consciousness of the God that you deserve. So as always, relax, you're gonna get some. And as you can see, our boy, he's happy because he's chosen, blessed, and favorite, and he won a trophy. AJ said that doesn't look like a trophy.
That's the worst trophy I've seen in my life.
But that is a trophy, first place.
That is disgusting.
You actually can't chat shit to me because my drawings have improved.
I think I need to tell the world that I smoked you on FIFA.
I can't even say nothing about that, so you can say what you want.
Smoked you at FIFA, smoked you at table tennis.
Okay.
It's just over.
Okay, let's relax now. Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
And this
I
time,
smoked you, you smoked me. Now today we're going to see who's really got it. Don't be a hard rock when you really are a gem, baby girl. Respect is just the minimum.
Minimum.
Lauren is only human. Girl, you know you better
Watch out.
Some guys are only
About
that thing, that thing, that thing, that thing, that thing. Okay. Perfect. So first things first. I have to preface what I'm about to say with a particular redefining on what you have been taught God is, because for the most part, most of us are taught to conceptualize God through a religious particular frame. So anything that I'm about to say might come off as demonic or blasphemous, but I can assure you there's no pentagrams in this fucking office, nigga. Like, I'm not doing a mad thing. AJ wouldn't be here if I was doing a mad thing. I don't like those type of things either. But it's important for us to redefine what you've been taught to conceptualize God through, and that is through an exoteric frame. Exoteric comes from the Greek word exoterikos, which means outside. For the most part, when it comes to a certain degree of information, there's people who exist on the outside and there's people who exist on the inside. The people that exist on the inside are what's considered esoteric. Esoteric comes from the Greek word esoterikos, which means inside or pertaining to an inner circle. So this degree of information, this metaphysical or esoteric explanation of what God is might sound terrible, but that's simply because you've been taught to conceptualize God through the frame of reference of the exoteric. So it's important something to frame. Now, the way that I like to conceptualize it is this. When I'm going to be explaining God, you have to understand that you've been taught God through a illusion. And what I mean by that is this. Typically in the Abrahamic text, God is conceptualized to have a particular persona and characteristics. But to have a personality comes from the word persona. Persona etymologically in Latin pertains to a mask, right? God can't have a mask because unfortunately masks are something that exists within this third dimensional realm, but God being outside of this third dimensional realm, God is above personality and characteristics such as jealousy and wrath and the other things that we've been taught to conceptualize God through. So we're going to have to redefine everything, especially how you view God from an esoteric standpoint, so you can actually feel like God is helping you in your reality. Because for the most part, most of us have had periods in our life where we question, one, if God was real. We also question if God hated us. For many a time, I used to think, does God hate me and my family? Does God hate my people? So on and so forth. But that's simply due to the fact that I've been taught to conceptualize God through an exoteric standpoint. So just take that in before I do what I'm about to do. And as usual, make notes and leave them in the comments.
Yo, how can someone say, A girl I met briefly introduced me to Nero. She has since been blocked, but her gift remains. Every person has a role in your life.
Nah, she contributed her role, man. She filled her role. Man said she got blocked. She said she got blocked.
Yeah.
You got. What did she do, bro? You gotta tell us what she did.
You know.
Hey, man, game is game. And guys, one thing that I'd like to frame is that even though this information, no information that you ever read or anything is esoteric, what is esoteric is you. And you need to come to this understanding that esoteric isn't the information, it's the mind that has the capability of deciphering the esoteric nature in whatever is being interpreted. Because the truth of the matter is, you don't read anything except your level of consciousness. You don't watch anything except your level of consciousness. So one person's particular view is going to be based upon their frequency. Your frequency quite literally determines the world that you live in. There's 8 billion people on this planet. There's one planet. 8 billion different worlds. That's because there's 8 billion different frequencies, 8 billion different interpretations. So don't go out trying to convince people to see how you see it and so on and so forth, because you're not arguing anything except frequency. Now, to the point that I made earlier, some people worship a poor God. What do you mean by that, Nero? Relax, you're gonna get some. Some people worship a stingy God. Some people worship a rich God. Some people worship a harsh God. Now, what do I mean when I say not everybody has the same God? Not everybody worships the same God for one reason in particular. And that is due to the fact that you mold God. You mold God based upon your level of consciousness. You have to come to the understanding that in an esoteric standpoint, as I mentioned earlier, esoteric, through an esoteric lens, the way that you need to conceptualize God is as follows. And this is nothing more than a metaphysical explanation, the perspective metaphysically on what God is. God is an impersonal energy. God is an impersonal energy. And you can conceptualize God in a manner like electricity. You can conceptualize God in a manner like gravity. You have to come to the understanding that God is impersonal for the most part. I know from a religious standpoint, there's this conceptualization that God is sat on the throne in the sky, which doesn't make sense, because in order for God to be sat down, that means he has to have a bottom. That means that he has to have arms. That means he has to have feet that touch the ground, which is nothing more than a human conceptualization of what God is. Because unfortunately, the moment that we attempt to define God as humans, we confine God through our own lens in a humanistic way. Hence why they say God sits on a throne, because that's what we do as human beings. But simultaneously, they'll tell you that God is infinite, because God is infinite. And because God is infinite, we can't conceptualize God. So any attempt to conceptualize God is always going to have some type of error, some misunderstanding, so on and so forth. So that's something that you have to understand. But the easiest way for you to conceptualize God is that God is an impersonal energy that is the substance of reality. Can also conceptualize God as the most high level of consciousness. Which is once again beyond the personification and the anthropomorphization that religions have given to God, which really and truly don't make sense. But from a metaphysical standpoint, it's a bit more abstract. Now, as I said, exoterically, God has characteristics. God has a personality. And God has desires. This is how it's conceptualized in religious texts. But esoterically, that's not what God is. As I said, you have to come to the understanding that you mold God based upon your consciousness. Now, why does this matter? Like I said, the whole point of all spirituality should be to catapult you into your desired reality. There's no point on trying to find enlightenment if you're living in a reality that you don't like. Hence why the most important thing, as I always say, spirituality without the ability to control your reality is vanity. But most of us have a concept of God. But what we don't understand is that our very concept of God is in direct contradiction to our desired reality. And ultimately, due to the fact that there's nothing more powerful in this universe than God, if what you conceptualize God to be is in direct contradiction to the reality that you're trying to create, you will lose every single time. I repeat, if what you have conceptualized God as, whether consciously or subconsciously, is in direct contradiction to your desired reality, you will feel like every attempt at your desired reality isn't working. And that's a bar, write that down. And that's due to the fact that God is the most powerful thing in the entire universe. Now, that essence of God is also within you. Hence why in Corinthians, esoterically, it says, do you not know that you are the dwelling place of God, the temple of God? Now, as I said, some people worship a poor God, some people worship a stingy God and a rich God. Why do I say that? I say that because you mold God based upon your level of consciousness, your state of mind. Think about it like this. And this is quite funny. How many times when people, and I say this because I grew up in church, right? How many times when you see niggas pray, do they say, God, if you give me this, I won't ask you for anything again? God, I pray my girl isn't pregnant. If she's pregnant, I'll do better. I'll stop doing this. I'll stop doing this. You niggas negotiate with God. God is infinite. And because God is infinite, what does God lose from giving you anything? And that's what bar that down. But our human conceptualization is that we have limited God in our conceptualization, because we're negotiating with God like he's a stingy individual. And because we're negotiating with God like a stingy individual, and we mold the consciousness and the experience of God, we then experience God as stingy. And it gets deeper. Pause, but just stay with me. We then also conceptualize God, typically, most people, through a poor reference, through a poor frame. We frame God based upon our own level of consciousness to be a God of poverty. Right? Hence why there's this underlying societal belief that there's nobility in poverty. That don't worry, it's all right to be poor, because guess what? When you pass away, you'll be abundant in heaven, which is nothing more than something that the ancient royals and monarchs used to tell the masses to really just soothe their egos, as to explain the complete difference in the wealth and poverty scales. Some people conceptualize God to be rich. There's some people who you'd feel like, there's some people that are so rich, you're thinking, God just keeps blessing them. God's just blessing them like crazy. Like, what are they doing? Are they praying extra hard? Like, what are they doing? There's some people that experience a very harsh God. I used to be like that based upon my own conception. I mean, a lot of you niggas are like, Nero, da. I used to be a very strict Christian. I used to argue with people for hours on end. Very, very strict Christian for many years of my life. And my God was harsh. If I stepped out of line, best believe something's gonna go wrong. That's the only reason I didn't bang fraud. Oh, my bracelet fell off. That's the only reason I didn't. Someone in the comments is gonna be like, see? That's instead of me just hitting my arm off my leg. But that was one reason I was actually afraid to do fraud. For people who don't know scamming, right? Because it's very accessible when you're young. I thought to myself, if I do this, I know God's going to punish me. I know I'll be the one and he'll make an example out of me. And because that's how I perceive God, that's how I molded God. So that's how I would then in turn experience God. And it all works the same way. Now, let me explain why. Let me just put the water thing here.
The only attention I had during this video was on Nero's shoulders. Bear in mind, that video that he commented on was based on attention. Spiritual warfare on attention.
My shoulders aren't even that big, man.
Here we go.
I'm telling you, they're not. Guys, I can promise you, most of you, whether you want to be egotistical and be like, oh, I'm not religious, I'm not an NPC, I'm not a slave, Everybody has a conscious, subconscious conceptualization on God in the back of our minds. And until that is rectified, everything that you do in an attempt to move to your desired reality will feel like you're trying to push a boulder up a hill. Because whether you want to understand this or not, you have a concept of God in your head. And until that concept is made in direct alignment with your desired reality, it's not going to work at all, and that's to borrow that down. So please, I can't stress the importance enough of getting this concept and understanding this. Yo, how can I be in a hospital yesterday, just visiting, and then they're like, we can't go anywhere. I'm like, what the hell? All the doors were shut. I'm like, what's going on? Nigga, someone tried to steal a baby.
He's trying to steal a baby.
Can you imagine? I was like, huh?
That's insane.
They were like, it's on lockdown. People are trying to steal a baby. I said, excuse me.
How far did they get?
So they took everything off lockdown because the woman was still in the hospital. She didn't get far. Someone tried to steal a baby. Apparently that's more common than you think.
That is nuts.
I'm not even joking. Apparently it's more common than you think.
I didn't know you could get so close to even like grab the baby.
Me neither. I don't like hospitals anyways. Cool. Now, there's a couple of things that explain the impersonal nature of God, as I was alluding to earlier. The first thing, what pen should I use? Let me use brown, why not? The first thing is Acts 10:34. Acts 10:34 states that God is no respecter of persons. God is no respecter of persons. I repeat, of a truth I perceive that God is no respecter of persons. What is persons referring to? Persons is referring to the ego. When I say the ego, I don't mean the unpleasant characteristics. I'm talking about you, your avatar, your 5 physical senses. The energy of God has no respecter of persons. Think about the concept of electricity. Electricity isn't going to do a criminal background check and ask you what's your credit score before it shocks you or it doesn't shock you. It's going to shock you regardless if you misuse the energy. Pay very close attention if you misuse the energy. In the same manner that gravity, if you misuse gravity, it's going to be quite an unfortunate fall to the ground. It's the same way in Acts 10:34 that God is no respecter of persons, because God is a reference to an impersonal energy that simply is. The impersonal energy that is the substance of reality, which is also within you. Matthew 5:45. What does this one say? The sun shines on the evil and the just and the unjust. The rain rains on the just and the unjust. Once again, this is a reference to the fact that God is impersonal. And unfortunately, a lot of us have this tendency to moralize the universe. We attempt to moralize the things that happen. Why do bad things happen to good people? Why do good things happen to bad people? Well, it's because God is no respecter of persons. It's an impersonal energy that you mold based upon your level of consciousness. So if your level of consciousness is the equivalent of success and abundance, and you're a shit person, unfortunately, as bad as this sounds, and your ego won't like this message because I don't like it either. It's just the uncomfortable truth. But there comes a point where you need to transcend your perception towards seeing how things should be and how they actually are. You need to stop thinking like a human and begin thinking in accordance to God, the impersonal nature of God. And it's due to the fact that unfortunately, whatever frequency, whatever state of consciousness that you are the equivalent of, regardless of the actions that you do, that will put you in that particular reality. Hence why Jesus said, the rain rains on the just and the unjust. Once again, think about rain as an impersonal energy. When rain rains down, it's not targeting the bad people. It's like, oh, that guy, yeah, he's a bad boy. He was lying the other day. Let me rain on him. Pause. It doesn't think like that. And you need to get this conceptualization, because this is the true essence of it. And this one, which is a hadith, which is absolutely, when I came across this, it made everything make sense. Allah says, I am the way my servant thinks I am. Pay very close attention to that. Thinks I am. For the most part, we have to come to the understanding that God is an observatory consciousness. It simply observes. The dwelling place of God, as it says esoterically in the Bible, is you. You are the temple of God. You are where God is stored. Due to the fact that we mold the consciousness of God as human beings, our experience of God is always going to be in direct reflection to what we have conceptualized God to be. And if your conceptualization of God has been taught that God is wrathful, that God is vengeful, and that God is harsh, guess how you're going to experience things when you're not doing right mentally? You're going to experience something harsh. Something's going to go wrong. Something's not going to go right. You're going to feel like, why me? Fuck's sake, why is this happening to me? Or because you don't understand that you have a concept of God that is in the background of your mind, that every time you act out of accordance to, you're punished. These two scriptures in particular in the Bible, you have to come to this understanding that for the most part, even though it shouldn't, and I agree, it shouldn't be like this. And trust me, this weighs heavy on my heart and my head more than you think, because I could never conceptualize why bad things would happen to good people. You know, people that do the absolute most, people who have the least give the most, unfortunately, from what I've seen and from what I've experienced. You know, it just didn't make sense. But then, unfortunately, the truth of the matter is, so long as mentally you are in a state of consciousness of poverty, suffering, and struggle, despite the good that you do, because God is more powerful than anything in this universe and your consciousness is God, that's ultimately going to be what creates. And this is the understanding that you need to come to. God, consciousness, it's more powerful than Acts 10:34, persons. Persons. And when it says persons, it's referring to the ego, it's referring to the physical, it's referring to action. Consciousness doesn't respect it. And it should, but it doesn't. Consciousness, it just doesn't respect it. It just doesn't respect it. And to the hadith, I am the way my servant thinks I am. How do you conceptualize God? How have you been taught to conceptualize God? What do you think of God? Because what you'll find in that answer is how the universe treats you. And that's what borrow that down. Due to the fact that, of course, inherently, subconsciously, we have an understanding that God is the one that orchestrated this entire universe and this entire reality, which would mean that your reality and God are one. So the way that, however you've attributed God to be, is going to always show up in your reality one way or another. I can guarantee you, if you've been taught that God is wrathful and God is hateful and God is vengeful, then there'll be essences of that show up in your reality where you end up saying, why me? Why you? Because you've molded God without realizing. And this is so beautifully shown in Exodus with the I am statement. You know, there's a scripture in Exodus where, you know, God makes Moses a god to Pharaoh. He said, I have made thee a god to Pharaoh, and I've made your brother Aaron a prophet. God made Moses a god. It's there. I'll get AJ to put it up on the screen. That's not out of context. I can explain the entire story of Exodus to you, but I'm sure most of you are familiar with the Egyptians and the Israelites and Moses overthrowing Pharaoh. And when God shows himself to Moses, or Moses allows God to show him, however you want to conceptualize it, on the mountain, which esoterically, the mountain is you going above the world, outside the world, and above the world, the complaints, your perspective, and the way that you look at the world and elevating your consciousness. That's what it means to go up on the mountain. Hence why all the prophets in the Bible had to go up on a mountain to speak to God, because they had to elevate themselves beyond their humanistic concerns, desires, and conceptions. And then they encountered God. Moses encountered God. Moses said, who should I say sent me when I go back and tell these niggas that I'm going to free them? He says, tell them, I am sending you. I am hath sent me unto you. That's what Moses said. I am hath sent me unto you. And what is the I am? When you introduce yourself to somebody, AJ, what do you often say?
I am imagining.
There you go. When you're upset, what do you say? I am angry. When you're feeling sick, what do you say? I am feeling sick. When you're tired, you say, I am tired. When you say, I'm poor, I am poor.
I am Jamaican.
Ignored.
Right.
You have to come to this understanding that I am, anything that comes after I am is what you're declaring God to be. Anything that you say after I am is what you're declaring God to be. Hence why Jesus says, let the weak man say, I am strong. Christ said that. Let the weak man say, I am strong. Why weak and why strong? It's because weak and strong are polarities of each other. Weak, strong, they're polarities of each other. They're the same energy. Their only difference is their rate of vibration. And simply by concentrating and declaring the opposite side of polarity that you want to experience, you will then begin to experience that particular polarity. Hence why Jesus said, let the weak man that says, I am weak, say, I am strong. How often do you mentally think things? I am, because whatever comes after I am is what you're saying God is. Because the I am statement is a reference to the impersonal, unmolded consciousness of God, that as human beings, we then in turn go and mold. And when you introduce yourself to somebody, why do we say I am? It's because we're unconsciously identifying with God in ways that we don't even realize. As a way of explaining yourself, as a way of expressing yourself, this is the very same statement that made Moses a God over Pharaoh temporarily. And what does it mean to be, what did it mean for Moses to be made a God over Pharaoh? It meant that Moses had a stronger frequency. Anything that has a stronger frequency, then you will be your God. Some people have made gods out of poverty. Some people have made gods out of suffering. Some people have made gods out of toxic relationships. Some people have made gods out of money. There's nothing more powerful in this universe than God. Now, first you over dedicate, then you notice that you're great and you've been a whole time and it stack you, and it slap you in your face, then you stack it in your safe. Like, okay, you the definition, nigga, knocking to the bank.
Some people are real creative, you know. Mangoes.
What now?
These guys are the best.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, starts great.
Oh, okay.
I don't care that before every video, AJ shaves Nero's entire body and then shines him up. Nero looks great and his material is life-changing. To add on to that, saw a message the other day talking about, do I get to watch you oil up?
Did you tell him yeah? Shaves me. Guys, I just don't grow hair on my arms. I don't know many black people that do. I guess I'm never beating these oiled up allegations. Okay. Yeah. Use purple. So, and this is going to be a very interesting revelation that most of you have probably never come to. You know, I often hear people say, you know, what's your relationship with God like? You know, oh, I love God. You know, I have a relationship with God, so on and so forth. But it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for one reason in particular. The relationship you have with God is the relationship you have with yourself. Now, what do I mean by this? You have to come to the understanding that God is within you. You are the dwelling place of God. You are the temple of God. Churches will often say, oh, this is the house of God. This is where God is. This is where God lives. Well, God is in everything. God is quite literally in this whiteboard, is in this pens of substance. anything that is matter in this universe. Matter is nothing more than the precipitate of consciousness. It's a droplet of consciousness. Consciousness is another name for God. God being the substance of reality. God is consciousness. So God isn't just in the church. God is in everywhere. But if we're going to go by Corinthians, Corinthians says that you are the dwelling place of God. So where you are is where God is, which means that if you are the dwelling place of God, you have God encased in you. And whatever structure or shape that you have structured yourself to be is exactly what God's going to be. And that's, I'll borrow that down. I want you to conceptualize the consciousness of God or the energy of God as like water. If you have a cup, water will mold itself to the shape of the cup. If you have a glass, water will mold itself to the shape of the glass. If you have a bowl, water will shape itself to the bowl. And this is exactly you, but the structure is your mind. The glass is your mind. The cup is your mind. The bowl is your mind. And if you have a small structure, then God will mold itself to that. If you have a large structure, then God will mold itself to that. And come to the understanding that the relationship you have with God is truly the relationship you have with yourself. So here's the irony that I was pointing out earlier. A lot of people will be like, I love God, but they hate themselves. How the fuck does that make sense? It's actually not possible. Because how you feel about yourself is how you feel about God. Why? Because you are the materialization of God. And that's what borrowed that down. So here's the irony of it all, because this changes everything entirely. This should change the entire way that you conceptualize God. If internally you are always talking negative about yourself, then what you don't realize is that you're talking negative about God. How could you not be? You're a creation of God. You're the materialization of God. When you're talking negatively about yourself and saying, I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it, you're saying God can't do it. So guess what? God can't do it. When you're mocking yourself internally, you're mocking God. Hence why then that reflects in your reality. Because the irony is this: the relationship you have with God is a relationship you have with yourself. And yourself is directly interconnected to reality. If you're belittling yourself, you're belittling God. And if you're belittling yourself, then guess what reality is going to do to you? Belittle you. If you're doubting yourself, what you don't realize is that you're really questioning God. So then guess what reality is going to do? It's going to outpicture conditions, circumstances, people, and events that only lead you to have more self-doubt in yourself. Not because the world's against you, but because you're against you, but you think you're with God. How the fuck does that make sense? Doesn't make any sense at all. Doesn't make any sense at all. And it's an unfortunate thing, the fact that people never realize this, because a lot of people claim to have such a good relationship with God. Then they have terrible relationships with themselves. But then they wonder why their world is the way that it is. It's because the moment you have a terrible relationship with yourself, you have a terrible relationship with reality. Despite all the praying that you do. Why? Because God is no respecter of persons. You can do everything you want physically to get to your desired reality, but if you don't have the prerequisite of the state of consciousness equivalent of your desired reality, consciousness, which is God being more powerful than anything, you're not going to get there. You're going to feel like you're literally swimming against the tide, going against gravity, trying to act as if the energy of electricity won't zap you if you misuse it. And as I said, what is the relationship you have with yourself? Let me ask you a question. If that voice in your head that talks to you every time something isn't going your way or something goes wrong, or every time you make a mistake or do something that you don't like, if that voice that inside your head that says everything to you that it does was a person, would you be friends with them? That's a deep question. And more often than not, we wouldn't be. I know when I do something wrong, my head's like, fucking idiot. You absolute idiot. What were you thinking? What were you thinking? How could you be so stupid? But best believe if that was a nigga talking to me, I'd be like, what? But we don't conceptualize it like that. Without coming to the understanding that how you talk to yourself internally is a reflection of the relationship you have with yourself. And the relationship you have with yourself is the quite literal encasing of the relationship that you have with God. You can't have a better relationship with God than you have with yourself. It's just not possible. You can believe, trust me, You can believe that God is abundant. You can believe that God is wealthy. You can believe that God is generous. You can believe that God is, loves to bless. But if internally you aren't wealthy, if internally you aren't blessing yourself, if internally you aren't your own favorite, then how could you ever be God's favorite? And there was a point in me where, I studied ancient civilizations, history, Black history in particular. And I questioned to myself, I look around and I thought to myself, I used to think, does God hate Black people? Like, honestly, serious question. I'm sure most Black people have conceptualized this. Like, does God hate Black people? Especially if you look at it from a religious lens, it depends what lanes you want to go down. Some people say that we're cursed, on and so forth, breaking covenants, Deuteronomy scriptures. The people who know what I'm talking about know what I'm talking about. But then I came to the understanding that, unfortunately, how could God love us if we don't love ourselves? And if we've been taught to hate ourselves internally, then that's the relationship we have with God. So then the reality that we walk around in is going to be everything that shows that we are hated. And you can extrapolate this to your own life individually. That's just me having a little thought experiment out loud. But think about it. How could God treat you in any way better than you treat yourself? Because you mold the consciousness of God. So once again, if internally you make a mistake, you do something wrong, and then you're punishing yourself internally, guess what the fuck God is going to do to you? Best believe God's going to punish you. And then when God punishes you in your reality, you're going to think, I shouldn't have done that. I knew God was punishing me. No, you were punishing yourself and you just never realized. You were punishing yourself with the emotions of guilt, frustration, and resentment, and upset, thinking thoughts that were aligned with that particular frequency, and then that I was outpictured into your reality, because relationship with you and reality are always going to be one. In fact, I want you to remove the idea that you and reality are separate. You and reality aren't separate. You and reality are the same thing. So whatever you're experiencing in reality is nothing more than a reflection of you. And this is the funniest thing about it, right? Is that we don't begin to understand how all of this stuff gets outpictured into our reality. Everybody wants to be God's favorite, but are you your own favorite? No, because you look at somebody else and pedestalize them. You think, oh my God, how are they able to achieve this? They're so smart, they're so rich, they could do this, they could do that. Without coming to the understanding that if you simply internalized all those thoughts that you're externalizing, your reality would then be shifted to a degree to represent the same people that you're looking up to. The fact that you're looking up to them and not seeing yourself on the same level is the very source of your issues. Everybody wants to be chosen by God, but you look at other people and say, God has blessed them in crazy ways. They must be chosen. Without coming to the understanding that you haven't been chosen by God because you haven't chosen yourself. You look at other people and say, those people are blessed. Wow, things are going right for them. God's blessing them. Have you blessed yourself? Nobody is highly favored except those who highly favor themselves. Nobody is made lucky by anything except those who deem themselves lucky. Nobody is blessed by God except those who bless themselves. Nobody is God's favorite except those who are their own favorites. And I don't mean that in an egotistical sense. And that's what bar I that down.
Someone said Nero's mic is holding on by faith.
That's funny. Some girl commented like, I love watching your videos, I hear you make jokes about cults, I literally just left the cult. Who's gonna tell her that she's in one? Who's gonna tell her that this is a cult? No, I'm joking. This is not a cult.
Not yet.
No, I don't want it to be a cult. Because the thing about cults is that you can't question the leader. I desire to be nobody's leader or no one's teacher. I'm literally just a student. And let me say that to say, please, I want you to expect me to be perfect. Please, expect me to be Nero perfect so I can disappoint you. Because the truth of the matter is I refuse to be upheld to the same standards as other influencers who want to uphold this particular image of perfection and that everything is right and they are never this and they are never that. So please uphold me to perfection at your own disappointment, because best believe, and with all due respect, I don't care about disappointing you, and I don't care to be upheld to a standard of perfection, because that's not what I want. I'm just a guy who just sharing what he learns about what works in his own experience and for my clients. Speaking of which, if you're an entrepreneur who's stuck at a revenue ceiling and you want to break out in the next couple of weeks without making any business changes at all and 2 to 5 extra revenue, you know, I've taken clients from being stuck at 2 million for 7 years straight to securing a contract for 10.8 million in 5 weeks, taking clients from 120k a month for about 6 months to 260k per month in like 3 months, or taking clients from 9k to 62k in 2 months, all without business changes, except just changes to their frequency. So link in the description. Now, let's take it back to the start, right? Let's take it back to the start, because it's all gonna tie in now. As I alluded to earlier, most people worship a stingy God, a harsh God, a poor God. Due to the fact that we mold the consciousness of God within us. That's what the I am principle is. We can say I am weak, but then we've conceptualized God to be weak, so then we will in turn experience a particular degree of weakness in us because we are the materializations of God. Let's borrow that down. Now, if I said to you the relationship that you have with God or how you experience God is dependent upon the relationship you have with yourself, then if you are experiencing a stingy God, it is because you are stingy. How am I stingy, Nero? Well, why are you negotiating with God like he's some stingy individual saying, if you give me this, I won't ask you for anything again. I swear I won't ask you for anything again. I pray she's not pregnant. I pray she's not pregnant. Please, please, please. If she's not pregnant, I'll never ask you for anything again. Man, them, you know what I'm talking about. Even the girls know what I'm talking about. If you're experiencing a particular reality where you feel like if you step out of line, there's this harsh punishment in a sense, it's due to the fact that you are harsh with yourself. If you're experiencing a God who doesn't seem to be giving you much opportunity or much prosperity, and your reality is revolving around suffering and struggle and scarcity and survival, it's due to the fact that you are poor. And you don't not have money. You don't not have money because you're poor. You're poor because you don't have money. I think I said that the other way around. Say that again? Hold on, let me think about this. You're not broke because you don't have money. You don't have money because you're broke. Yes, there we go. Once again, all of these things are nothing more than references to your own state of consciousness. Your state of consciousness is in turn what molds God. The truth of the matter is, God is ready to bless you. God is ready to choose you and make you favored and make things go in your way the moment that you do. And this is an unfortunate thing, right? We've been taught this particular conceptualization that in God's timing, right? That, oh, I'll get this in God's timing. I hear people say this. Like adults around me say this, adults that grew up around me in church, oh, da 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 da. I'm like, oh, you've been praying for this for about 3 years. You know, I've been seeing you praying for the same things. It's not happening. Like, when is this going to happen? And it's going to happen the moment that you declare the consciousness of it. And that's what they don't have an understanding of, unfortunately. Because so long as they keep conceptualizing and asking for something, that's an indication to the universe that they don't have it. And unfortunately, you can only have what you already have. So if you're praying for something, that's an indication you don't have it. Because prayer isn't asking, prayer is declaration, a mental, emotional declaration, or whatever it is that you desire. So if you desire to be blessed by God, then guess what? You need to be mentally, emotionally declaring and operating in a particular manner that indicates to the universe that you are already blessed. And how would you feel if you were blessed? You'd probably feel grateful. You'd probably feel relaxed. You'd probably feel secure. Why would you think if you was blessed? You'd probably think to yourself, man, I'm so blessed. How often do you think that? And I don't mean it in a way for you to kind of, you know, do your gratitude journal in the morning and say, hi, I'm blessed, while feeling like absolute shit internally. I mean actually elevating and coming to the understanding that this is a declaration, not something to do for the sake of doing. You should never do anything for the sake of doing. You should do it for the sake of being. And that's a bar, write that down, because doing doesn't create. Being is what ultimately creates. And your being will overpower your doing any given time. Acts 10:34, God is no respecter of persons pertaining to the physical actions that we can take, our physical ego. God, the consciousness of God, which is inherently what your mind is made out of. If you desire to be favored by God, then you now need to be mentally and emotionally operating in a manner that indicates to the universe that you are favored by God. So you'd be thinking, oh my God, those are the people, they're really chosen, they're really favored. You'd be thinking about yourself. Because any way that we experience God is nothing more than how we are internally, unconsciously experiencing ourselves. And also borrow that down. So as I said, if there's an aspect of you that believes that God is harsh and every time you step out of line and something goes wrong, you're quickly punished by the universe or put back in place, it's because you're doing it internally. God isn't punishing you, you're punishing yourself. And so borrow that down. But simultaneously, God isn't making your life hell, you're making your own life hell. And then simultaneously, through the energetic polarities, God can't bless you until you bless yourself. God can't choose you until you choose yourself. God can't favor you until you favor yourself. And it's by arriving internally at a destination that indicates that you are these things that you desire. And remember, we all have an unconscious conceptualization of what God is. And until we rectify it from a point of exoteric to esoteric, understanding the true nature of God, then we can come to the understanding that we are the ones that mold God and how we experience God internally. That's what the I Am was representing, and that's what the Hadith was representing. And you have to understand these things in order for you to experience a different reality. Because for the longest time, I used to think to myself, do people worship the same God? It never made sense to me that people could be in one building and all have completely different lives. There's a nigga there who's driving an E-Class Merc, and there's a nigga who can barely have money to catch the bus to go to church. How the hell does that make sense? While worshiping the same God, how does that make sense? And it's due to the fact that our experience of God is molded by our state of consciousness. And each one of those individuals sat on those rows have different states of consciousness. And because they have a different state of consciousness, they have different realities, because your reality and your state of consciousness is one. And that's why. Wake up, drink it, in the ace of spade like it's water. If she catch me cheating, I will never tell her sorry. If she catch me cheating, I will never tell her sorry. Wishes in Bentley, I got Bentleys, I got Rarries. Turn a 5-star hotel to a trap house. Roaches everywhere like we forgot to take the trash out.
I like the way you cleaning that board, bro. That's right.
See, now you're making me nervous. Like I can't even clean. You know, somebody was like in the comments, oh, you know, AJ needs to stop talking because he's distracted. Nigga, get the hell out of here and don't come back. With all due respect, it just doesn't make sense to me. Like I can't I'm telling you, my mind can't fathom that people actually come here, learn something, but then try to micromanage this shit. Like, I'm not like these other spiritual niggas. I have no desire to mold myself to your conceptualization or do shit. I'm doing this stuff because I want people to get the information. So if I'm gonna chat shit about rappers every now and again, or talk about food, or talk about FIFA or table tennis, I'm gonna do it.
That's my king.
See, you know what? Keep complaining about AJ. Guys, you have to come to the understanding that yes, I can drop this information, but I'm actually the most serious person that you'll ever meet. Like, I'm never serious at all.
That's true.
But they can't conceptualize it. They think to themselves, "Hey, this guy that's dropping information, he must be like a serious." I'm really not serious. I swear.
I've only seen him serious when he's playing table tennis.
And when I owed money to the HMRC.
Yeah, that was a dark time. So.
Listen, when you owe money to the tax man, it's no joke. It's no joke. Ultimately, this is going to be what changes your reality. Well, along with everything else, they're all pieces that fit together like a neat little puzzle. But you must embody the consciousness of the God you wish to experience. Now, what do I mean by this? A lot of people wish to experience a particular generous God. You want to experience a God that is generous and likes to bless you. Well, if that's what you want to experience, then begin by blessing people. Begin by blessing others. It doesn't even necessarily have to be monetarily. It could be with your time. It could be with your attention. It could be with you being attentive. If you want to experience a God that is generous, then you need to be in the consciousness of being somebody who's generous and blessing. The moment that you begin to do that, then you will begin to embody that particular consciousness. The moment you begin to embody that consciousness, all consciousness is immaterialized matter, which is reality. That's what the universe is made out of. If you want to experience a rich God, then you need to begin to embody yourself as a rich individual. Once again, this always doesn't necessarily mean monetarily and financially and physically. It's mentally and emotionally and spiritually. You can't be entertaining these particular ideas of scarcity, this struggle, so on and so forth. You need to be entirely in the consciousness of God, because as it also says in James, a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. Another way of saying that is that you can't sit in two chairs at once. You're either in this particular consciousness of being rich or in this particular consciousness of being poor. You can't play both ways, because ultimately the universe is always going to gravitate to the state of consciousness that has the most emotional charge behind it, and more often than not, it's always going to be our most comfortable one, which in the instance for most of us is going to be poverty. But you need to be a rich person internally, because the truth of the matter is you need to be rich before the world proves it to you, and that's borrow that down. You need to be anything before the world proves it to you. If you want to experience a God that is loving, then guess what you need to be a source of? Love. You need to be embodying love by stepping into a particular light of unconditional love, by just showing love to strangers, even to the niggas that you don't like, and especially to the people you do like. You need to begin embodying that. If you want to experience a God of abundance in the opportunities that God will throw your way, then internally you need to be mentally and emotionally declaring a particular degree of abundance and stepping with that and not allowing anything else to come up in your mind. You need to, and here's the thing, somebody, and this is so crazy, I saw this in the comments just now, somebody actually created a whole acronym, AJ, for the way that I define frequency.
Go on.
So to the lady that done this, you're amazing. I believe it was baked.
Okay.
Beliefs.
Attention.
Yeah. Next one.
Is that I?
Yeah. What else is it?
Intention. It's not intention.
Intention.
What is it?
Get this nigga out of here. You're done, buddy. You're done. You're done. Whoever was complaining about AJ, keep complaining about him. I'm done with this nigga. He's done.
Give me a sec.
I know somebody's saying it right now. So to the people who understand.
Oh, this is horror. Okay, move on. Tell me I, and I'll get the rest.
Identity. T?
T. It's not thoughts, because E means emotionally charged thoughts. So what's T? What's T?
Can I be honest?
Go on.
I don't know.
I was like, what?
I don't know. I think I forgot an acronym. But it's beliefs, attention, identity, emotionally charged thoughts.
Exactly. Okay, I got that.
Oh,
So what's T?
conviction, emotionally charged thoughts. Charged thoughts.
Yeah. So it's not bait then.
Hold on.
Your knees. You're like that.
It's been a while since I've been on my knees. Pause. Beliefs, attention, identity, emotionally charged thoughts, and emotional conviction. She was right. She was right though for saying thoughts, but obviously the thoughts are emotionally charged. She was right.
Okay.
So let's
I
say
get it.
T capital there.
I get
Right?
it.
So that's still bait.
I get it.
You need to have the beliefs of a particular God that you want to experience. And when I say a particular God that you want to experience, I mean the reality in which you want your God to reflect. So if you want a particular degree of abundance, then your beliefs need to be aligned to abundance. Your focus or your attention needs to be aligned to abundance. Your identity, the way that you go about doing things, has to be within the identity of somebody who's abundant. The thoughts that you experience with a particular degree of emotion have to reflect abundance. And the emotional conviction that you have in abundance is ultimately what's going to push things, because reality is a placebo. And what I mean by that is this: I can give you a sugar pill and say it's a painkiller, and your mind, if with enough belief, your body will start to begin to react and respond as if it's the actual painkiller. And as above, so below. So if internally in our human bodies, there's a particular aspect of us that works with a placebo, then reality in of itself is a placebo. And the placebo that triggers reality into place is the emotional convictions, that particular degree of knowing whatever it is that you want to experience. So with that being said, align the God that you, or align the concept that you have of God internally in alignment with your desired reality, or they will always butt heads and be in direct opposition to each other.